Good evening, souls. Both wandering and watching. I am Lucius Voss, your midnight concierge into realms best left unlit. Because who needs therapy when you've got me? And welcome back to Spectral Margins, where the only thing thinner than the veil is your sense of safety, your grip on reality, and, if you're like me after midnight, a few moral boundaries. Tonight's tale is a cautionary fable for all the Eds of the world. You know the type. Lonely, desperate, and just one unfortunate haircut away from joining a cult. Ed wanted to be seen, to be wanted, and was willing to bleed just a little to make it happen. But take heed. When you flirt with the dark, don't act surprised when it slides into your DMs with a sacrificial clause and no unsubscribe button. Pinned by the delightfully disturbed DJ Montaño and performed by a voice cast so good it's probably illegal in at least 3 dimensions. Victoria Voss, Geoff Sturtevant, Terri Hudson, and yes, your favorite nighttime greeter. We invite you now to step into a ritual as old as regret itself. So lock your doors, silence your doubts, maybe hide the family pet, and take a long, slow breath. You're going shadow walking.
You have to stop right now,
Nancy said, mortified as there were people witnessing what was happening.
There is absolutely no way I would go to prom with you, Ed.
Everyone passing through the halls was watching, whispering, giggling, and pointing. With one quick turn and the flick of her crimson and mahogany ponytail, she stormed off down the hallway. The other students cleared a path for her as if she were Moses parting the Red Sea. Ed pushed his glasses up and stood dumbfounded with the poster board hung around his neck and the bracelet he saved 6 months of allowance to buy.
Well, at least you mustered the courage to go through with it.
Ned clasped a hand on his shoulder. Ned and Ed had arguably been the nerdiest kids in school, going all the way back to the 3rd grade when they met.
Hey, you can get your money back on that bracelet now and get those Dungeons & Dragons monster sets we've been eyeing.
He wiped his runny nose on his sleeve and sucked as much as he could with a big inhale. I'm not giving up that easily, Ed said as he shrugged his best friend's hand free and shivered involuntarily, grossed out by what he had just witnessed. There has to be a way to get through to Nancy. He stuffed the box with the gold bracelet back into his hip pocket and headed toward his next class. Mr. Bolka was many things, but forgiving for being tardy was not one of them. As they walked towards their classes, Ed felt guilt welling up. The truth was, Ed was tired of being a nerd, tired of being a nobody. Ned seemed completely content with it, though.
We meeting up after school?
Ned probed, but knew his friend well enough to know he would make up some lame excuse and they would reconvene tomorrow. Nah, my mom left me a huge list of chores I gotta get done, or she's gonna change the password to the Wi-Fi so I can't get on and game later. Just as Ned had expected. We'll meet up at the normal spot in the morning, Ed said in a distracted tone before they went separate ways.
You gonna hop on Fortnite later?
Ned hollered as the distance grew between them. I don't know. We will see, Ed said dismissively, stepping through the doorway milliseconds before the bell rang. He avoided being sent to sweep and having to explain that to his mother. She was already tired and stressed from working 2 jobs. The last thing he needed was to piss her off. Mr. Bolka was reviewing Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart, and this normally would have Ed's full attention, but today he was entirely distracted. His mind shuffled through the various scenarios he had walked through last night. In each one, she was so stunned and taken aback that she practically leapt into hugging him, repeating the happiest word in the English language.
Yes, yes. Of course, yes.
Her imagined voice echoed in his mind. Where had he gone wrong, though, he wondered. Was it his tone, his outfit, his breath? Did he not put enough cologne and reek of B.O.? Had he put too much on and it was overpowering? There had to be an explanation here somewhere. Before he knew it, the bell was ringing and the day was over. He headed out of the school on autopilot, unsure of what he would do when he got home. He had lied to Ned. There was no laundry list of chores waiting for him at home, because there was no one at home. His mother would be working her normal night shift at the Waffle House. He was inherently a clean person and learned long ago, the less of a mess you make, the less there is to clean up.
Want to take control of your life?
A feminine voice shouted somewhere in front of him.
Want to influence those around you who won't give you the time of day in the real world?
The voice continued and Ed's ears perked up.
Learn the secrets passed down from mystical masters for hundreds of years. These secrets can only be entrusted to a handful of special people. Don't let this opportunity pass you by.
The individual standing before Ed appeared to be, by all accounts, normal, other than the velvety red cloak with black trim. A 17 to 18-year-old girl with black hair, blue eyes, and freckles. She's gotta be from the Wicca Club or something, Ed thought as he neared her.
I'm not from the Wicca Club or your school, for that matter,
she said just loud enough for Ed to hear. What? He uttered in disbelief.
That's what you were thinking, that I belonged to some club from your school. No, I was sent here to find you, Ed.
His eyes went wide and his jaw fell open at the sound of his name. Who the heck are you and how do you know my name? He said, fumbling through the sentence.
Who I am isn't important. I know your name because I was sent to help you. You are special to the one who sent me. He can help you get what you want.
You're crazy. Whoever this person is has no idea what I want, he said indignantly. Ed noticed people were passing by as if he didn't exist. This was pretty normal for him, but it felt like people actually didn't see him or this mystery girl in front of him.
Never mind them. They aren't important, and he indeed knows what you desire. You want Nancy Swoonmaker to be all yours, forever.
This rattled Ed slightly, but then his crush for Nancy wasn't that big of a secret. More precisely, everyone knew. He had been infatuated with her since her family moved into the house at the end of the street during the summer before 4th grade.
What if all you had to do was whisper in her ear while she sleeps tonight? And when she wakes up, she will be begging you to date her.
The thought of Nancy crushing on him so hard that she made a move was a possibility he had never even dared to consider. It was akin to thinking you could hold fire and not feel the heat or get burned by it. I don't know where you come from, but here they call that breaking and entering. Plus, how could whispering in her ear completely change how she feels about me? He probed. He hated to admit it, but the chasm between their current feelings and even slightly liking him seemed a wide gap.
Have faith. We like to call it shadow walking. My master is capable of helping with such things.
Your master? Ed said, weirded out by the term. See, you are in some kind of crazy cult or something.
No, my master has done great things to help me, so in return, I handle tasks and run errands for him.
She punctuated the sentence with an innocent smile that was even more unsettling than the whole experience had already been. The promise of Nancy's affections were almost too much to bear, though. What do I have to do? Some kind of crazy voodoo witchcraft spell with pentagrams and animal sacrifices? He huffed.
I mean, if that's what you're into, then go for it. But no, none of that is needed. I just need a drop of your blood.
If you think I'm gonna let you get near me with a sharp object, you're even crazier than I thought. Ed took a half step back. The strange woman extended her arm and opened her hand with her palm up. In her hand sat a small, squeeze-activated finger pricker. He looked at it, confused.
I won't, I promise. If you want to go through with it, you will have full control.
She extended the flyer and he grabbed hold of it. With the page in his hand, it was different than he had assumed it would be. He expected it to be cheap, disposable copy paper, but this had weight to it. It was thick and felt old somehow. Almost like parchment, though he had never actually held parchment paper before. He assumed this is what it felt like. There were 4 simple steps listed on the page in plain text with a black ring at the bottom, a little larger than his thumb.
If you decide to attempt to shadow walk, you must prick your thumb and place a drop of blood in that circle. Then just follow the instructions on the page and you're done.
That's it? Then Nancy will be mine? He looked at her incredulously.
Yep.
Her voice was so light and cheery. Okay, couldn't hurt to try, I guess. Ed shrugged his shoulders. If it doesn't work, I'm out a drop of blood? That's not too bad.
Agreed. It's quite the generous offer. Now, just so you understand how this works, shadow walking comes with its own set of dangers.
The stranger's voice became hard and stern with a sharp edge to it.
You are guaranteed 2 walks safely. 1 practice walk so you can get the feel of it and see that it works. For this one, find someone near your house and whisper something you want in their ear as they sleep, and it will be yours the next day. Once you see it works, then you can venture down to the end of the street for your precious Nancy.
Her face was a blank slate, cold and emotionless.
Should you wander out a 3rd time, you will do so without his protection. Whatever else is out there in the dark will be able to hurt you or replace you.
Wait, what do you mean, replace me? His head snapped up from the page to try to read her face.
Enjoy!
Her voice echoed happily in his ears, but she was gone. Suddenly, all of the surrounding noise rushed in like a tsunami. It was like the whole world around them had been on mute and someone turned the volume to max instantly. Ed flinched and pulled his headphones up over his ears to help dampen the effect. The walk home was a confusing mix of emotions between the rejection earlier and the potential miracle solution folded up in his back pocket. He arrived home to the smell of a pot roast in the crock pot with carrots and potatoes. Coming home to this was as natural as autonomously breathing. Money was quite tight, even with all the hours his mother put in, so simple meals that would provide ample leftovers were the norm. It was so frequent, Ed couldn't even really smell it anymore when he entered. It was just part of the house now. He shredded the roast, served his portion, and parted it out into quart-sized Ziploc bags. His mother was too frugal to spend money on Tupperware, so the Ziploc bags would have to do, like they always had. He was one with this task and rinsing out the crock pot without realizing he had done it. One time, Ed had been careless or lazy or some combination of both and forgot to put the roast away. He fell asleep with his video game controller in his hand around 10:30. His mother startled him awake by pulling him out of his gaming chair, clearing her belt loops and whooping him good. She screamed at him for wasting food the whole time she hit him. It was days before he could sit down without wincing. She later apologized for flying off the handle, but the message was clear. Don't ever waste food. It was the same as burning money in the fireplace, and she would tolerate none of it. Ed ate and watched some YouTube on his outdated smartphone. He looked up a couple videos on shadow walking, but didn't find much. Afterwards, he jumped online to play Rocket League, but couldn't keep up. His system was so old and laggy, it was ridiculous. Why couldn't his mom just splurge one time and get him a PS5? He thought he was tired of scratching and clawing to get by. He pulled the parchment from his back pocket and read the steps. 1. Lay down in a position that is comfortable where your body will be safe and undisturbed. His bed would do for that. 2. Use white noise to help relax the mind and prepare the spirit for release. I'm sure I have an app for that, he thought. 3. Close your eyes and picture yourself as two pieces, the physical body and the spirit. 4. Visualize your spirit form sitting up and separating from your physical body. A small asterisk below the last step said, to rejoin the spirit and the body at the end, just reverse the order. What am I even doing? He threw the parchment on the desk in the corner of his room. Am I really expecting a sheet of paper with 4 steps to magically make a girl fall in love with me? The thought sounded so stupid and childish.
Just give it a try,
A voice whispered in the back of his mind.
If it doesn't work, you've only lost a drop of blood.
The strange voice mimicked his earlier statement. Screw it. Ed reached into his pocket and fished around for the finger pricker. Once he found it, he placed it against his thumb and squeezed the activation trigger. The sharp metal lanced its way into his flesh and helped guide his blood to the surface. The pain rippled through him as though he had received a small electric zap. Just as quickly as the sensation came, it was gone. He pressed his thumb against the parchment and tried to keep it in the circle. The dried out fibers drank his blood in quickly, sucking it in and spreading it like an ink stain. He watched the crimson wave spread until it hit the circle. It filled completely, then just stopped. He wondered if the ink created a barrier against the blood. He read the instructions over once more, kicked off his shoes, and plopped down into his bed. Step 1, check, he said as he pulled his phone from his pocket. He wasn't sure if saying the steps out loud made the process more or less awkward. He swiped through his phone until he found an app called Sleep Sounds and tapped the icon. He found the white noise function and turned it on. Static filled the air and startled him for half a second. He plugged his phone in and set it on the side table. Step 2 is completed. He closed his eyes and tried desperately to imagine himself as two halves of the same whole. Thanks to the inventions of video games and YouTube, it had been many years since he really relied on his imagination. Ed laid in bed and focused on trying to separate his spirit from his body. Time felt like it was inching along, but it also felt like he had been trying for hours. His impatience was building. He felt so stupid just laying there, getting nothing accomplished. Enough was enough. Somewhere there was a woman laughing her ass off, thinking of this dumb high school kid trying to split himself in half. He sat up, annoyed about the whole thing. His throat felt dry and scratchy, so he headed towards the kitchen. He reached for the door handle and fell straight through the door. He tucked and rolled as the ground quickly approached, but didn't feel the ground as he rolled. Ed looked down and noticed he could see the carpet through his hand. Startled, he sprang to his feet and ran towards his room. He reached for the door handle again out of habit and almost went ass over tea kettle again. After he regained his balance and found himself at the edge of his bed, he stood there stunned as he looked down at himself. A shiver ran up his spine, or whatever he had as a spirit, and he slowly backed away. Okay, so I can pass through physical barriers, but not the ground? He thought that was weird, but maybe it was normal? He slowly stepped through the door and into the living room. He looked around and noticed everything looked the same, but with a slight haze to it. As he reeled in his racing mind, he heard keys jingle. The doorknob rotated and the door swung open to reveal his mother coming home from work. "There's no way it's that late already," he said. His voice echoed funnily here. His mother, Sharon, looked over in his direction like she heard something, but brushed it off quickly enough. She pulled a baggie of the roast and veggies out of the fridge, dumped it into a bowl, and shoved it into the microwave. After punching a couple of buttons, she plopped down into a dining room chair with a huge sigh. Ed never got to see this side of his mother. She looked like a pencil worn down to a nub. How does she have the energy to deal with my crap when she looks this tired, he wondered. He looked over at their microwave. 15 seconds left. He leaned over and whispered in his mother's ear. A loud beep blared as he finished his message. She lifted her weary body out of her seat and Ed pulled back quickly. He wasn't sure what would happen if they touched, but he wasn't willing to chance it. With his test completed, he strode back to his room and eased his way back onto his bed. As he matched his body's position, he imagined his spirit snapping back into place. When the final button snapped into place, warm sensations like waves rippled through his body. He fell into the most peaceful sleep he could remember. There was no dreams, but he felt like he was floating on clouds. There was also a presence, as though he was being cradled. Ed awoke to a beam of light cutting through the gap in his curtain, blinding him. He raised a hand to block it and was thrilled that he was no longer transparent. That was one hell of a dream, he mumbled as he gained his bearings. He was in his bed just as he had been when he went to sleep. Nothing about him felt off or weird as he expected it might if he really had shadow walked. It just seemed like another normal day. He crawled out of bed and hit the bathroom to empty his screaming bladder. It was protesting the 64 ounce of soda he gulped down before falling asleep last night. After one of the longest pees of his life, he headed out to the living room and kitchen area. The house was empty, just like every other morning. His mother was already off to work, and he had to get ready for school. A glance at the stove told him he had 15 minutes to be ready if he wanted to make it on time, so he turned and headed towards his room. A crash startled Ed just before the door burst open.
Oh, good morning, Edward.
His mother's voice was far cheerier than he had heard in a long time, maybe ever.
I didn't wake you, did I?
She reined her voice back to an indoor appropriate volume. No, you didn't, he said, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. What are you doing home, though? Aren't you supposed to be at work already? His voice had a morning hoarseness to it he hadn't shaken off yet.
I am, but I called in sick today,
she said with glee. Oh, what's the matter? Migraine again or coming down with a bug? He said after clearing his throat.
Nope, nothing at all. I've already called your school and excused you too, just so you know.
She stepped in the living room fully and used her foot to close the door behind her. She made her way to the kitchen, minus her usual sluggish and exhausted vibe. Ed's mind was blown. Was this really the same woman? He followed her into the kitchen where she had pulled eggs, bacon, and a tube of rolls from a grocery bag.
You hungry for some breakfast?
She probed energetically. I don't normally eat this early, Ma, he said. The smile on her face began to fade. But I'm starving this morning for some reason. He watched intently to see if she would perk back up. She did immediately and went on with her preparations. So what's the occasion, Ma? It wasn't his birthday or hers. Oh, God, wait. Was it his mother's birthday? He suddenly couldn't remember his mom's birthday.
Just because,
his mom said with a levity that rivaled a feather floating on the breeze.
What is the point of slaving away the way I do and never doing anything fun or relaxing with it?
She glanced over at him with a smile that was ear to ear.
Go get dressed. Breakfast will be ready by the time you're done.
Ed nodded and went back to his room. When he was done, they sat and had breakfast together in a way he couldn't remember. The two sat together at the dining room table, conversing, laughing, joking, and trying not to spit out their food or drink. It was incredible, Ed thought. When each of them had finished, his mother collected the plates and said,
Let's go. We've got a busy day ahead of us.
Busy day? He looked at her confused.
Yeah, first we are going to get pedicures, and then we will go shopping.
The plates crashed loudly in the sink as she practically chucked them in there. It was a miracle they didn't break. That sounds like girly stuff, Ma, he sighed.
Not when you see what we're shopping for,
She said, trying to be enticing. It worked. Ed was hooked. They spent an hour at a nail salon a couple of miles away from their house, and while Ed was thoroughly embarrassed to begin with, once the foot and calf massage portion of the pedicure started, everything else melted away. The salon worker practically shook him to wake him out of the trance he was in. His mom paid at the register and kicked in a tip with a glow about her that he never knew existed. As they walked towards the car, his feet felt brand new, like they weren't even the same feet he had entered the pedicure with. The mother-son pair had lunch at a local taco shop a short time later, which never happened. We gotta split pennies in half if we can, he recalled his mother saying once, but today she was treating it as if they were paying with Monopoly money and it didn't affect them. It was crazy. Why was she acting so differently? He couldn't put his finger on it. They capped off the day by walking through an outdoor mall. The warm sun was tempered by a cool breeze and gave the perfect balance to the afternoon stroll. As they approached a gaming store, Ed couldn't help but stare at the PlayStation 5 sitting in the locked-up display in the window.
let's go see what they got.
His mother said. Ed's jaw damn near hit the floor. What? He practically tripped over the word. She grabbed his hand and pulled him into the store. A grin grew on his face as he walked around the store. He perused the latest game releases for the PS5, knowing nothing new had come out for his system. After a while, he realized his mother wasn't by his side. As he glanced around the shop, he found her at the checkout counter. She had a large bag gripped by both handles and was lifting it off the counter while smiling at the associate. He strode over to her, bewildered about what she would have purchased. What? He started, but before he could complete the sentence, she extended her arms and held it out towards him.
Here you go, son.
Her smile beamed as she handed over the bag. Ed took both handles and opened them to get a look at the bag's contents. Inside was a brand new PS5 with a download code for the latest Call of Duty game. I don't know what to say, he stuttered.
Surely I raised you better than that.
She said. I mean, thank you. His voice came out foggy and uncertain as he tried to process it. Thank you 1,000 times. Thank you, Mother. He shifted the handles to one hand and wrapped his mom in the tightest hug he could imagine with his free arm. They drove home, and Ed barely took his eyes off the bag. He practically ran to his room to set it up when they got home. His mother headed to the kitchen and started dinner. She turned on Pandora and sang right along with her playlist. A woman sang about wanting to turn back time, preceded by a man who wanted to hold on to the night. The two ate dinner, told jokes, and laughed like they hadn't in years. At the end of the evening, Ed climbed in bed and his mother came in to say goodnight. She leaned down and hugged him and kissed him on the cheek for the first time since he was 5 or 6. Ed had to admit it. The day had been heaven. He laid in bed, trying to figure out what had made today different from any other. A memory from his shadow walk hit him faster than greased lightning. What he had whispered in his mother's ear. "We deserve to spoil ourselves," he started. "A spa day for you and a PS5 for me." His suggestion had come true. If it had worked on her, it would have worked on Nancy, he thought. So he set to work on slipping back into the shadow realm. It felt smoother, more natural this time, like he wasn't trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Before he knew it, he was sitting up and looking back at his own face. He got to his feet and headed out of his house and down the road. He surveyed the neighborhood as he walked towards Nancy's house. It looked almost the same as any other night. There was a slight fogginess again, and the world had an almost sepia quality to it. The lights gave off a light amber glow which he paid no mind to. Ed made this walk 100 times to confess his feelings for her, but as he got alongside her house, he would chicken out and make a lap around the block. Well, that would change tonight. He was about 2 houses away when he realized something. Everything was still. There were no cars driving by, no dogs barking or street cats out looking for scraps. I wonder if shadow walking is always like this. The thought passed quickly as he turned up the path to her house. He often wondered what the inside of her house looked like. He stepped through the door cautiously, as this still didn't seem like it should be possible. Standing in the entranceway of his crush's home, he found a living room area to the right. Nancy's father was passed out in a seated position with Sports Center on and a beer wedged between his crotch. A staircase to the left most likely led to the bedrooms. Wearily, he placed a foot on the first step and expected it to pass through as he transferred his weight. It did not. He focused on climbing with each step, and in little time, he had summited his Everest. A faded soft pink door with purple 5-petaled flower stickers on it sat halfway down the hall. He practically tiptoed like a cartoon character and bit his tongue trying to keep silent. It was only after he passed through her door that he realized nothing he did made a sound here. Looking around her room, he saw a chaotic juxtaposition of items everywhere. It was like different age timelines of her life all collided in the center of the room, and the concussive force threw things all over the walls in every direction. A soft murmur came from the wall directly across from him. There, in a silk red spaghetti strap pajama set, lay his princess. The room must have been on the cooler side because her nipples were doing their damnedest to cut through the thin material. It was everything Ed ever imagined and more. There were, so many things he wanted to see and touch, if he was being honest with himself. But he would do what he was here for, and if it worked, those things would come in time. He crossed the room and stood by her head. Ed leaned in and whispered, "You suddenly see Ed Ramiro in a new light tomorrow and find him very attractive. You develop a crush on him and ask him if his invitation to go to prom is still open and that you would love to go with him." With his work done, he exited the house and headed home. An uncontrollable smile stuck on his face, and he walked. When he reached the path leading to his door, he noticed a shadow off in the distance. It almost looked like a person standing on the corner in a trench coat. Even this oddity couldn't alter his mood or hold his attention. He entered his body and slept soundly the rest of the evening.
Edward, come on, wake up already.
A muffled voice coaxed him from his slumber.
Hey, you gotta wake up or you're gonna be late, and so will I,
the voice said. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and found his mother standing over him with her purse slung over her shoulder.
About time.
She exclaimed with a sigh.
I thought I was gonna have to hit you with a bat to wake you up.
How were you gonna do that? Ed yawned. There weren't any that live around here. He sat up, stretched his arms wide, and arched his back. Even if you swing it by its wing, it's not very heavy. He peeked out of one eye, expecting to catch a pillow upside his head. Instead, his mother just wore a flat, non-plus expression.
Ha ha, smart guy. You're so funny,
she said, trying to hold her unimpressed look, but cracked a smirk before turning towards his bedroom door.
There's a breakfast burrito with eggs, cheese, bacon, and bell peppers on the counter for you. Eat it before it gets cold. Love you.
She blew a kiss and headed off to work. Ed got ready, ate his burrito as he headed off to school. He had vague memories of his shadow walk the night before, but as the morning went on, more and more came back to him. As he approached the corner where he met Ned, he ran through it over and over in his head. He could almost see the whole walk in his mind now.
Hey, Ed, you in there?
Ned called out to him as he waved a hand in front of his face. He shook his head and came back to reality. Yeah, I'm good, man. He stepped off the curb and headed towards school. He decided not to go out of his way to find Nancy. He didn't want her to think he was stalking her if the shadow walk failed. They naturally crossed paths between second and third period, so he would make sure she saw him as they passed. He hoped the sight of him would spark something in her mind and she would come running. Ed saw Nancy and Antonio approach each other from opposite directions at the end of the hall. Antonio was a multi-sport jock and an overly cocky asshole to boot. The two had been an item as much from a popularity standpoint as an attraction one since the beginning of sophomore year. As he approached, he could tell this wasn't one of their normal lovey-dovey conversations. Antonio's brows were furrowed and he seemed confused. What are you talking about? You're not making any sense. What do you mean you're going to prom with someone else? He was so angry, he practically spat.
It's not my fault,
she said.
Something was different this morning. I don't know how to explain it, but my feelings have changed.
She leaned in close to whisper something.
I'm trying to be chill about this and not make a scene for both our sakes.
Psh, you can take all that chill shit and keep on walking. You're dumping me in front of everyone? That ain't right, he shouted. You know I would be upset if I hadn't been going behind your back and sleeping with Chloe for the last month. His gaze shifted from her face to Nancy's best friend, standing next to her. Nancy turned to her right to see Chloe, bewildered at first. Then she regained her composure with a snobby lift of her head, and she walked away from Nancy without a single word. Ed reached the group at the crescendo of the ordeal, locked eyes with his crush, and began to turn towards his next class.
Oh, good. You're here,
she said as she wiped tears from her cheeks. Nancy reached out and grabbed Ed by the arm.
I'm sorry about what I said yesterday. I've had some time to think about it, and I'd like to go to the prom with you.
She struggled mightily to hold on to her nonchalance about being cheated on for the last month. Ed was astounded. It had worked. It had actually fucking worked. Nancy Swoonmaker was asking him to go to prom with her. Yeah, sure. If that's what you want to do, I'm game. In the last 2 days, not only had he convinced his mom, the penny pincher, to buy him a PS5, but the love of his young life was asking to be his date. This was incredible. How had this miracle solution not been passed along by others who had done it before him? Something this good should be going viral on TikTok. Ed lost himself in his train of thought. Pain exploded in his left cheek. His head whipped round violently, and the world spun on every axis possible. Antonio had thrown a right hook with every intention of taking his head clean off. Incredibly, he wasn't knocked out cold from the blow. His momentum carried him into the lockers that lined the hall with a loud crash. You been sneaking around with my girl, huh? I guess that whole show the other day was all an act? Well, let me show you the price for taking things that ain't yours. Ed leaned against the lockers like the Tower of Pisa and could see the right haymaker cocked back, ready to be fired. As Antonio pulled the trigger, a giant meaty hand swallowed his bicep and stopped the punch dead in his tracks. A hulking security guard everyone called Behemoth practically lifted the jock by one arm. It's the principal's office for you, kid. His timbering voice penetrated everything. You need the nurse? He said, glancing over. No, I'm okay. Ed stood and tried to save face. It was only a glancing blow. He chuckled. No, it wasn't, kid. His look remained stoic, but the dry delivery said he knew Ed was full of shit. That landed harder than the asteroid that killed the dinos. I'm fine, really, I am, Ed said with a faint smile. Then what's everyone standing here for? Get to class! He snapped sharply like a drill sergeant. The rest of the day went on without event, and Ed walked Nancy home. She gave him a kiss on the cheek, which caused a world of confusion. Fresh pain bloomed when her lips hit it, but it gave him a warm sensation he had never felt. They said their goodbyes as she walked in, and he turned and headed home. Later that night, just before bed, Ed came to the realization that it didn't matter what day it was, Antonio would be back for blood. He made up his mind that he would perform one final walk to wipe his mind clean of the whole thing. He knew he was only supposed to shadow walk twice, but Antonio's house was just 2 streets over. He would be there and back before he knew it. He sent himself into the shadow walking state in record time. After leaving his house, he took a left and walked down the street towards the next intersection. Everything felt a little darker this time, and there was a weird feeling like he was in a ball of static electricity. A couple of blocks down, a figure with a trench coat and a hat on stood under the streetlight. This was the second time he had seen this person. Surely there were others that had been convinced to shadow walk. Why did he not see more people as he walked? He contemplated this as he power walked towards his new rival's house. Why would you waste your 2 walks just standing on the corner? It didn't make any sense to him, but he had more important fish to fry. After a couple of minutes, Ed arrived at Antonio's house. It took him a little searching to find his room, but once he did, he was at a loss for words. What could he say that would get this guy to back off for good? Then it hit him. He leaned down and whispered in his ear, "Anytime you see Ed Alvarez, you will be overcome with fear and piss your pants." Pleased with the booby trap he had just set inside Antonio's mind, he left the house filled with joy. He felt lighter than he had in years. He would meet up with his new girlfriend in the morning to take her shopping for her dress, and when Monday came, school would be different. An eerie sound began to emanate from everywhere, like an old-timey song you'd hear coming from a record player in a black and white movie. It was just loud enough to hear it, but it warbled between being on and off pitch. "That's my cue to get the hell out of here," he mumbled aloud and began jogging back the way he had come. His head kept craning to the left and right. His eyes were wide, trying to spot anything out of the norm. Ed was approaching the last intersection, and once his house was in sight, he would sprint all the way home and never shadow walk again. He crossed the empty intersection as the strange music slowly increased in volume. As he stepped onto the curb, he looked up the street out of pure curiosity for the figure on the curb. Nothing was there. They must have got bored and went back to their body, he assured himself. He began to walk before peeling his eyes away from the distant curb. As his head rotated forward, he ran smack into what had to have been a wall.
"Good evening, Ed,"
said a deep, growly voice. It sounded like a voice that would come from a tiger if they could talk, he thought to himself. Before him stood a man cloaked in a black leather duster that went clear down to his ankles. On his head rested a wide-brimmed cowboy-style hat. He surveyed the man up and down. He caught a glimpse of something under the duster that looked strangely like a tail with a pointed tip. It sucked back a split second after he saw it, almost like it knew he was looking at it. "Sorry, I didn't see you there." He looked at the man before him and found that the shadows of the night penetrated him deeper than anything else around them. He couldn't make out the man's face, but he knew he was staring at Ed, The man seemed to be huge, like the duster concealed much of his size. At 5'11", Ed wasn't tiny in stature, but this man was at least a head and a half taller than he was.
Was your endeavor worth it?
The voice probed in a flat tone. What do you mean? Ed's voice shook as the streetlights began to flicker. He slowly stepped back, not taking his eye off the thing that stood before him. His heart was pumping for dear life. Something was very wrong. His mind felt wild, crazed even, like a rabid animal thrashing and lashing out against a cage.
We had a deal, a signed contract. You have violated the terms of that contract.
The voice took on a growl.
There are consequences for violations.
I don't remember signing a contract. Ed was frantic, his eyes darting around everywhere to find his escape route. As he searched, his eyes saw it again. The tail. There was no mistaking it this time. This thing had a tail. The thing reached inside the leather duster and produced a scroll. Gripping the top between thumb and forefinger allowed the rest to unfurl for display.
This is your blood, is it not?
The voice boomed. I was told that was meant for protection. He quivered back.
Yes, protection for 2 trips. This is your 3rd, is it not?
The anger in the voice was practically tangible. It was just supposed to be one last quick run. Tears streamed down his face. Ed was sure he had already wet himself.
It's always just one more for your kind.
The voice hissed.
For the violation of greed, you shall be punished.
Ed didn't want to hear the rest. He bolted towards his house, his arms pumped and his legs pistoned as hard and as fast as they could. The record player of insanity had reached max volume with its eerie song. It was deafening. The lights everywhere strobed, and it was throwing off his perception. Ed closed his eyes and pictured where he was on the street in his mind. There were about 3.5 houses left till his walkway. The creature in the coat was gaining on him. He could feel it. Each footfall of the thing behind him shook the ground. What the hell are you? Ed shouted as he ran.
I am the Shepherd of Fire, and you are now part of my flock.
A demonic voice growled. Flock that! Ed yelled back as he opened his eyes. He planted his left foot hard and cut up his walkway. He stretched out his strides, trying to make it to his door. As he got one foot on the stairs to the landing, a large meaty paw grabbed his ankle. He couldn't budge. He would have had more mobility if he was stuck in a block of concrete. The other paw reached up and tore the shirt off his back. Ed couldn't understand how that worked since he was shadow walking, but it felt just as real.
For your greed, you shall recruit 10 souls to my flock.
A thick, jagged nail dug into his back, searing the flesh as it etched its path. An excruciatingly long line ran most of the length of his spine and was crossed perpendicularly and a third of the way from the bottom. The upside-down crucifix had been branded into his flesh. The pain was intense. He was unaware that he had been screaming the whole time. The restraint on his ankle released, and he fell forward onto the landing. He scrambled to his feet, ran through his house to his room, and practically dove back into his body. He jolted awake instantly and sat up. White-hot pain stabbed his brain immediately. His back was in agony. Ed stood up and went over to the mirror hanging from his door and lifted his shirt. A dull red glow emanated from his back, and he knew every second of it had been real. "What the hell do I do now?" he whispered.
10 souls.
A low growl echoed in his head. Ed saw a pair of glowing red eyes like coals from a fire in the reflection of his mirror. They were looking through his window. He whipped back around to find nothing there. The voice laughed in his mind.
10 souls are what you owe. Get to work.
Oh, Ed. Sweet, greedy Ed. If only you'd stopped at one wish. But no, he had to go full supernatural Groupon. But the dark doesn't bargain, my friends. It brands. And those who stray too far from the light, well, they don't come back alone. They bring souvenirs, usually cursed, sometimes chatty. Well, you've just heard Shadow Walking by DJ Montaño, with spine-tingling performances by Victoria Voss, Geoff Sturtevant, Terri Hudson, and myself, Lucius Voss. Proof that some narrators are born and others are summoned. If tonight's tale tickled your third eye, or at least made you double-check your closet, consider whispering our name, Spectral Margins, to someone you wouldn't mind dragging into the void with you. Until next time, keep your lights low and your contracts clear. Good night.